To show you how easy it is to file a claim with Geico, we hired a nature show host.
In the native habitat of a suburban driveway, the poor victim of a broken windshield is left assessing his vehicle, utterly helpless.
Well, not true. If he's got Geico, he can file a claim online, over the phone, or with his handy mobile app.
But like a lone gazelle, he'll suddenly be left to fend for himself, awaiting his terrible fate.
Nope. Geico will assign him a designated claims team to help him out too.
So the gazelle gets his car fixed and everything. Wow, nature is so cool.
Geico. Great service without all the drama.
Noom Weight uses psychology to help people everywhere learn about their eating habits.
Eating is my love language?
Yep, sure is.
I say yes to seconds out of guilt.
It's hard to say no to Aunt Jenny's banana pudding.
Wait, I do what?
Oh, fog eating happens to everybody.
What the
We know. It can be a lot to take in, but with the help of Noom Weight, you'll learn the psychology behind your eating habits, how to change them, and get closer to reaching your weight loss goals. Sign up at Noom.com.
Hello guys and welcome back to What's Up Doc, the true crime documentary podcast. I am your host Gemma Delaney and I am here to tell you what is up with the latest, newest and hottest true crime documentaries. Guys, remember, as always, we are on social media. We are at What's Up Doc podcast. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, if you're that way inclined. This week we have a very, very special guest. He is a comedian. He's absolutely hysterical. He is a social media sensation. He just absolutely exploded during the lockdown on Instagram. Irish funny man, Shane Daniel Byrne. And he very kindly agreed to come onto the podcast with me for this episode to talk all about the Netflix true crime documentary, Why Did You Kill Me? Did I see as well, or were you in Langton's Tuesday night? Oh, you're gone again on me. Can you hear me? You can hear me, but the sound is gone on your mic.
Sorry, I had muted my own microphone to open. I muted the microphone because I was opening a can and then I spilled some of the can. Are you a Kilkenny person?
I'm not. I'm Wexford, but we're on the Wexford-Kilkenny border.
Oh, okay.
And I only saw after the fact then that you were in Langton.
I have a lot of
Tuesday.
grow for Wexford.
Do you?
Yes. Yeah, because my parents have a mobile home in Duncannon.
Of course they do.
Yeah, and it's become the whole peninsula has become very popular now. And every time I'm looking at people on their Instagram holidays, or whatever, I'm like, that's my place. I feel like they're in my special part of the world that no one knows about. No, everyone's at the hook.
Yeah. If you're familiar with there, then you're probably familiar. There's a beach nearby called Carnivan, affectionately known by the locals. Costa del Carnivan.
Carnivan, but we don't swim there because it's more dangerous there.
It is. Now you're a step up from a local then, really. Like, you know the tides and everything, you know the safe beaches, the whole shebang.
So we do Bag and Bun.
Oh yeah.
Or the last day I did Booley, because Bag and Bun you couldn't get near. It was during the heat wave, so you couldn't get near Bag and Bun. So we went to Booley, and that was actually just as good. Booley, when the tide's in, it's nice.
All the locals were cracking up because they were blocking up the drives and all. All the cars were parking in the drives. It was so busy.
I could see people parking in places that I normally wouldn't dream of, and I was like, "Use our new people." And they're just people are just going for it. But that's the thing; it's so nice there. Bag and Bun is just so beautiful. Yeah, it is my favorite beach.
That is only down the road from us, and it was lovely. Even when we were, stuck within our 5K or whatever, we were able to track down and do the little clip with the book and all. Yeah, it's nice.
I was so well behaved during that 2K, 5K. I didn't go for a swim anywhere in Dublin because I was like, it's slightly outside of my 5K. Now I kind of wish, looking back, I was like, just go for the swim. Although we were more scared then, we didn't know.
We were. I know. And I work part-time, so the podcasting isn't funding the lifestyle fully just yet. Yeah. But I work in a nursing home. And so I was the same. I'm like, I love it. Oh my God, it's the best place and the best source of material ever. Like, I'm telling you, come and work a week in a nursing home. You couldn't make up half the shit. Like, I often say that. I said, if you saw it in a TV show, you'd say it was too far-fetched. But it's hysterical.
The truth is often stranger than fiction. Isn't that what they say? That's
absolutely. But yeah, no, like that as well. Sure, I was the same. I was pretty much self-isolating for the first couple of months because we were, you know, with the nurse home and all, and we were lucky, I suppose, because we didn't ever have an outbreak and we didn't ever have any active cases or anything like that. So we did very well. But yeah, we were super, super careful.
Just to say, I'm now late. I've slept it out. I've been late for your podcast. Then I've taken 20 minutes setting up, and now there's a spider, and I spilled my beer. I have a lot going on. He's actually very near your face.
Is he a big spider?
I don't know. No, I don't know if I got him or not. Oh God.
You're calmer than I am, because I would be terrified. I'm absolutely petrified of spiders.
Isn't this the season now? Like, that's the thing. That's what's next.
The big spiders.
There's like, we spend a bit of time with moths, we deal with them, and then the big spiders arrive and go like, we're enormous and we're giant black hairy things and we're in the home. Yeah.
They're in heat now. That's why they're coming in. They're coming in for the ride.
Don't they kill the men as well? Spiders do that.
They do.
Dead right, I say.
Just the ticket for them. I gave you the task of watching a documentary, a true crime documentary on Netflix. Now, honest question time, first of all. Are you into true crime documentaries? Are you into true crime?
Like, yes and no, right?
Go for it.
So obviously I was taken with like everybody else a few years ago, I was taken with the Making a Murderer. I was like, okay, into
the OG.
This, right? So everybody was whipped up in a frenzy when that came out. Yeah, kind of the OG. This particular film, when I put it on to watch it, you know the way Netflix shows you how much you've watched? It started at like 12 minutes and I was like, oh no, I've already watched 12 minutes and turned this off. But I didn't remember. So maybe I was rushing or something. I don't know. But yeah, I had watched a bit of that. I do like it. I struggle with the ethical thing of like, sometimes it's like this kind of pornography element of like staring in. So I kind of struggle with that sometimes. But it's very hard not to get, if it's well made, the film or the series, whatever, it's very hard not to get taken in. Like you get swept away with it. So that's kind of
100%.
That's usually what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose the thing is, like you said, it's had this massive renaissance with Making a Murder there a couple of years back. And like, there's nearly at the moment, like the tide is nearly starting to turn on it. Like it's getting quite like you said, is this, you know, is it exploitative? Is it now, you know, with true crime documentaries, they've kind of nearly come full circle. So they started being exploitative, then they turned and started like solving crimes. And now I think we don't even, it's like anything, I suppose. It's nearly overload. And I don't know that they're still having the same impact that they would have started out with initially, if you get me. Do you know what I mean? So initially we were seeing the Making of Murders, and I don't know if you've seen The Jinx, but it was like voted the greatest true crime documentary of all time. But there were these groundbreaking things. It's hard to be indefinitely groundbreaking, though, I suppose, is the other thing as well. But the documentary that I tasked you with watching was Why Did You Kill Me? I'm going to go through all the boring shite first. So it's on Netflix. Sure. It's an hour and 23 minutes long. It was released earlier this year in April. The director, Frederick Monk. Had you heard of this guy before?
No, but now that you say it, it sounds like a name that you probably would have. It feels like I've heard it before.
Do you know, right? When I heard this name, when I gave it an old Google and I was like, who's the director? And it came up. Initially, I was like, isn't that your man out of Malcolm in the Middle? But that's Frankie Muniz or Munster.
Oh, yeah. That would be very interesting twist if he was doing that.
It was quite similar, though. I was like,
I think he went to become a race car driver. That's what
he did, yeah. So look, he seems to be a newbie on the scene, at least on Google. That's not to say he hasn't done work before, but this seems to be the first big thing he's done, and a collaboration with Netflix. In fairness, fair play. That's no mean feat, you know.
Are Netflix like producers on it, or is it from Netflix studio, or did they buy it?
It's made for Netflix. Made for Netflix. So they've commissioned it. So that's great. Well, I'm sure he pitched it to them, but yeah. But like I said, with a guy who has no real previous accolades, like that's a fair achievement in and of itself.
It's kind of the dream, really. Yeah,
it is absolutely, like, Jesus. And like I said, on the first kind of big thing he's done, because when you do Google search, normally there's like, you'd be surprised what they do, Shane. Like I've seen everything from, you know, previously directed My Big Fat Gypsy Wedding to banged up abroad. Like they normally have done
Yeah.
something, but like this guy doesn't seem to have done anything before, which is, like I said, fairly impressive. I'm going to throw a few of these questions to you. Do you think there is a particular message that the director wants to get across, or like what's the purpose of this documentary?
I think it's a strange one because it's so much of it is about rooted in what you can do with social media, and they still, even there's little tiny things, even though it's only a few years ago, it's really dated about how social media works.
Yeah.
And even that they call it social networking. Like they have this clip of his name, Matt Lauer or whatever, the Good Morning America, going on the social networking app MySpace. Obviously MySpace is a titan of the past, but like even hearing social network, we don't even say that word anymore.
No.
So it's a weird, like some of it I'm thinking like, are they talking about what social media can do? I feel like did a lot. There was a lot of things brought up, but actually I wanted more from all of them. So it was, for me, the threads of it are social media, and then like what gang crime is like, drug abuse and addiction, and also just poverty. But I wanted a bit more than just to say these people are poor. I wanted a bit more about them or something like that.
No, I think that's a really fair statement. Yeah, I think that's a pretty bang on synopsis. There seems to be a couple of different documentaries going on in the one and this one, but we're jumping ahead slightly. Had you heard of this crime before? Had you heard of this case before?
No, brand new.
Yeah,
brand new to me.
Yeah, and look, the thing I suppose about it, and again, not to be flippant, it's not like in the case, you know, I know we keep going back to it, making a murder or whatever. It's not a particularly new or strange event. It's tragic, absolutely, but it's you know, we're talking about gang violence, we're talking about gun crime, and we're talking about an innocent person being caught in the crossfire. I suppose really the reason that this has been made into a documentary is the novel approach they took to solving the crime, which was, you know, on MySpace, as you said. And I mean, like, we're not giving anything away too soon. That's all shown in the first couple of minutes of the documentary, and it's shown in the ads as well. So the ads show, like you said, this POV of a MySpace account and this kind of interaction between two accounts, and there's a very attractive woman and a guy, and she's like, do you love me? He's like, of course. And then she's like, well, then why did you kill me? You know, so this is the hook, and that's the way the documentary starts. And like I said, that was the advertisement used for the documentary as well. I'm going to run through the summary, I suppose, of the case itself rather quickly, and then we'll break down the storyline as it plays out in the documentary itself. So the case itself is the murder of Crystal Theobald. She was killed in Riverside, which is like a suburb of LA. It would be considered a dangerous suburb. And like we said, you know, gang violence, crime, drugs is nothing new there. I suppose it's unusual in that it's solved through MySpace in part, not totally. And then the storyline itself starts with the murder. It starts with the hook, I suppose. If you're going to go on that like classic 8-point story arc, it starts with the hook, starts with the murder of Crystal. So you're instantly, you know, into the thick of the story. And then we go back, I suppose, and they give us a little bit of an insight into the family and things like that. It's largely focused around, obviously, Crystal's death. The main character, I would say, in it is her mum, Belinda Lane. Is that a fair statement to make?
Yeah, she's the star, undoubtedly. Yeah,
she's the star, and then maybe the second or slightly lesser main is, I would say, her cousin, Crystal's cousin, who's Jamie, who's 23, and so she's the girl who kind of comes up with this idea of blogging on MySpace, in her own words. I didn't think that's what they called it, but apparently it's blogging on MySpace. But anyway, so she's killed in this drive-by shooting. It seems to be a case of mistaken identity. Basically what happens is Crystal and a cousin, Juan, and her brother Justin are getting into a car outside their house. At the same time, Crystal's mum is getting to a car. They're going in the one direction, but in two different cars. And an SUV, a white SUV pulls up. A guy hops out, sprays bullets at their car. And like I said, Crystal seems to be an innocent person caught in the crossfire. So it's really Belinda, her mum, trying to get justice, trying to figure out who killed her, why she was killed. And that's when her cousin Jamie comes into it. So I'm going to throw it over to you, Shane. Jamie is the cousin that sets up this fake MySpace account.
Yeah, I think her cousin she's young. She's 14. So initially she just uses MySpace as a way to talk about what's going on in her life, like anybody did. And particularly young people did. And then she decides, they know there's this local gangs in the area they're very familiar with. Everybody knows that these gangs are active in the area. They know who's in the gangs. So she decides she's going to try and basically catfishing. Before the film Catfish, there wasn't a term for it, but this is this is what she's doing. She decides to catfish these gang members. She picks a hot girl she thinks they will like. She makes it. And MySpace was much more, you personalize the profile. So you forget now we're stuck. Our current social media we have now is like, you can put whatever your pictures you want on it, but you can't change what it looks like in anybody's phone.
Were you ever on MySpace?
I had a MySpace, yeah, but I wasn't really that much into it. Like I was, whatever I was, 15, 16, around that age. I think, yeah, I had one. Yeah, MySpace was pre-Bebo. Bebo was a bit soft around the edges.
Yeah, never had anything before Bebo. It was Bebo and then Facebook. I never had a MySpace account. So, but it seemed to me to be more Bebo-esque in terms of like customability, like you can customize it and that kind of thing. Would that be?
Oh yeah, but it was like using HTML code. You had to like look up things of how to do it, and there was all like it was
okay.
Like you could have a basic profile, but you could also look up and learn things, and people get very creative with it and have. You know, nowadays everything is just so ready for us. If you want to tweet something with a GIF, you'd just search the GIF, search for any word in the whole English language, you'll find a GIF to match.
You had to really work for MySpace.
Yeah, and it was really important. How your profile looked was really important, and what song. You could have one song that would play, and that was always what would play every time somebody visited your profile, and you could have it. You could hide where the little song player was, so it was totally customizable. And I think that's in the film where she says, I knew how to do it. If I wanted to put this here, I could put this here. If I wanted to move in text, I could put this. If I wanted an image, she was kind of well up on it. And you forget that like that was new. Now we're like, young people are on the internet the whole time. But at the time, that was a new way of being.
Yeah.
Like, that was what, like, I remember we got broadband and I just for my leaving cert, and I was like, it was a big distraction.
The best
beyond
thing
talking
ever.
to people, but you wouldn't even know them that well. The moment the broadband arrived, like I will never forget it. But only after 6.
Oh, stop.
Remember that? Internet.
Oh my God. Crazy. I remember like, I remember telling, I know we're getting sidetracked here now, but I remember telling my daughter before that like when internet first came out, I remember my friend getting it, right? She was the first like in the school to get it. And we went over to her house and then like we spent ages dialing. I know she was a rich bitch. I spent ages dialing up on the internet, waiting. And then it loaded. And it was literally like, what do we do now? Like, what do you do? And I remember we went on to, this will tell you, this is very telling of my age as well. Do you remember Billy Piper? She was married to Ricky from Five, right? We literally were in her bedroom on the internet, and her CD was down on the side, and on the back of the CD was like the website for her fan mail. That was the first thing we ever did. We went on to Billy Piper's fan mail account because there was fucking nothing on the internet even then. Do you know what I mean?
Cute.
There was literally nothing like. So it's going.
No, there were websites,
back.
but they were just basically static pages with a picture of something. There was nothing there.
So look, we're getting off track. She's after setting up this MySpace account, and she is basically going to try and trap these gang members that she believes had something to do with her cousin's murder, which is like a massive undertaking. Like you said, what is she, 14 at the time?
She's 14 and she doesn't really have a very succinct plan to begin with. She's just like, she's detailed about it. She's like, she changes it. She says she wants to put up that the fake girl is going to drink beers, and then she changes beers to cervezas so that it's more appealing to the whatever, the bilingual gang members or whatever, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
To show that she's aligned with them. So she was detailed in it, but she didn't really have a plan. She was just going to go. And it was really interesting that as a 14-year-old, she knew how to do it. She's like, I'm going to go slowly. And the Crystal's mother is kind of pressuring her and is like, get go and ask them questions. And she's like, no, we have to wait. So I thought that was interesting. She seems like a very wise 14-year-old, particularly if you're in the throes of grief at the same time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Then kind of directly after that, we're introduced, I suppose, to the next main character, and that's Rick Wheeler. So he is the homicide detective over the case. And you can tell that this case is, look, not to say every case isn't a big deal, but he says himself that this is the second ever case that he's been given in this district, and he didn't solve the first one. And in his own words, he's not going to be 2 for 2. He has to solve this case. So he talks about, going out, taking witness statements. He talks about, like, obviously the family, Crystal's family, initially not being that forthcoming. And I suppose, like, that's not that surprising, even before you find out that, they've had run-ins with the law. I would assume, correctly or incorrectly, people from, an area like that they don't have the best view of the law. They don't feel like the law is on their side. They're not for them. They're against them. So they're initially quite, secretive, I suppose, and reluctant to give forward information. And I thought it was interesting as well, actually. I don't know if you noticed or not, Rick Wheeler was talking about that gang, the 5150. And he actually referred to them as a zoo. It just kind of shows the disconnect between, like, to even use that terminology about, I know it's a gang. They're a bunch of kids, though.
Yeah, they are. They're
all
young,
under 18. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Just to show that disconnect.
The family are kind of reluctant to speak to him, but there's an interesting thing that happens there. This is why I think this film it's chock full of different threads weaving through, but I don't think enough. I wanted more from each one, so maybe a series could have worked out better or something. But anyway, his version is they were reluctant, they weren't helpful, they were untrusting, and the family's version is they did not trust him because, I mean, we know now from watching the documentary, he said he was going to solve this case, and that often we see in these American documentaries is their pressure they're under to just get a conviction, to charge somebody, to get somebody over the line. So sometimes they don't even care if it's a real person, if it's the real killer or not, whatever they wanted to close this case. But they didn't trust him because he was saying things like he was questioning them in such a way that was suggesting they were involved, or that maybe that was a technique he was using to try and rile them up or whatever, to try and get as much information as he could. But I don't think that it didn't work. It slowed him down, I think.
Yeah. And he is like this Rick Wheeler, he is a bit of a David Brent character, I thought, initially anyway. Because like his introduction is, he's talking about the Grim Reaper thing on his desk, and then he's talking about, he's using a lot of terminology, and I'm like, you just know he's not using that every day. Like, he's doing that because the camera's there in front of him. Like when he's, he's talking about when he interrogated the guy that, so we're jumping forward a little bit, but not a huge amount. Belinda, the mother, ends up IDing a young guy. So she saw this take place, obviously, and Rick Wheeler presents her with some photographs that he finds from a yearbook and presents them with her. And she points out one particular young Latino guy and says, yeah, that's him. And so Rick Wheeler brings him in, and he's talking about when he's interrogating him. Do you remember this? And he's like, you okay, dude? And I'm pressing him. And he just kind of reminded me of a David Brent character. Like and his eyes kind of spiked the camera a couple of times as well. Like he's very aware he's on camera, isn't he?
Yeah, I thought so. He's a bit bravado-y.
Yeah.
I didn't like him. I was like, wouldn't want to hang out with him.
No.
He's not that he's created out to be. They don't do that in the film. He does it himself. It's not like it's made that he looks a little odd or whatever. But I didn't like him. I wouldn't. I wouldn't rate him. I don't know. I don't trust him.
He's not.
One of the boys didn't want to talk to him. Yeah.
He's not a very likable character, but I think, unfortunately, that is the case of a lot of characters, a lot of the people in this documentary, is that you don't really bond with anyone. I don't think I ever really found myself rooting for anyone. And I mean, don't get me wrong, don't mean to sound like so callous. Obviously, this is a real case and real lives, but you need to, don't you? You need to feel that connect with someone. Like, again, I know we keep going back to it, making a murderer, but like everybody connected with Stephen Avery. We just felt so bad for him. He was this guy and, you know, he didn't seem to have his full wits about him, and he was instantly likable, and, you know, didn't seem to be the most educated or the smartest guy. And it just seemed like, you know, he'd really been taken for a ride and used as a scapegoat. And so you were rooting for him from the get-go. Whereas with this one, I don't know that anybody was particularly likable in it. You know what I mean? There was things about all of them that
I don't know. I sympathize with the family. Obviously, straight away you sympathize because terrible tragedies happened. But I also quite liked Belinda. I was like, even though sometimes I was shocked when she, you know, she's talking about wanting to kill the boys herself. She talks about that kind of thing. But I think that is actually on the fault of the film rather than the people themselves. I think it could have been presented a little better to us, to kind of a better story. Like, those things in films don't just happen that we go,
absolutely.
And so I think there could have been a bit more. It could have been a better storytelling and more textured, more detailed.
Yeah.
Again, maybe not just one film trying to cram it into an hour and a half.
Yeah, absolutely. And Belinda as well, the mother. I don't know if you've ever seen it before, but like instantly, the minute I saw her on screen, I thought of Barbara from 16 and Pregnant. I don't know if you've ever seen that or not. Janelle's mother from 16. They're nearly identical. They're like carbon copies of each other. And I felt, I suppose, what knowing her from that, I felt like I'd seen her before. Do you know that kind of way? She's got a familiar kind of look and face to her. But yeah, so they go on with this MySpace account anyway, and they start garnering information from it. They do definitely start getting leads from it. They, like you said, you know, she sets up, you know, a situation where she's adding all of them. I think she adds 150 of the 5150 gang members, and she starts this engagement with them. And it goes on for a fair amount of time before she starts pressing them for information. So she's just really getting them on side. She's laying the groundwork that she's a real person. I know then they skip forward slightly. So obviously Jamie, the cousin, has the MySpace account. And then what happens is that they find out that it's not everything is as it seems. So initially the family are saying that, you know, they're completely innocent, and they are, don't get me wrong, and that they've no idea what the motive or whatever could be. And then they actually find out that Robert, Crystal's older brother, was chased by the same car, the SUV, the Ford Expedition, about 5 minutes before the shooting took place. And Robert and the other brother, Justin, they both have, you know, past issues with the law. There's, you know, different kind of things flash up from their records, like there's selling drugs and fighting and shooting, different things come up on the screen. So they've had run-ins with the law before. And then I suppose the police are kind of like, is this based on their past issues? Is it about money owed? Is it about drugs? You know, but they're not really garnering any major information from this initial fake MySpace account. So they set up a brand new one with this time Crystal's picture, which I thought was very bold. Did you?
Yeah, I was surprised. It becomes interesting throughout it, but I was surprised that they would think, like, these are young boys that you think are involved in this girl's death.
Yeah.
And you still use her picture. It seemed really strange. When I first watched it, I was like, what is this going to be pretending to be a ghost? I was like shocked at first. I thought it was like some weird thing. I was like, this is stupid. I don't believe this.
What the same?
But yeah, I don't know how that would work, but seemingly it did.
I thought the same. I was like, but not only that, it really sets yourself up to potentially fail. You know what I mean? You're not giving yourself the best chance
Yeah.
of succeeding. Surely the best chance of succeeding is to stay completely ambiguous and not give them any breadcrumbs, not give them any. But she actually, it's the mother herself, Belinda, who insists to the cousin Jamie that she uses Crystal's photo, which I just found kind of bizarre. But yeah, they do. They set up this new account, Angel, and she starts talking to this William Sotelo. He is one of the 5150. He goes by the name Jokes. And after about a month, she says, of talking. So this is going on for a considerable amount of time. And this is the second account. So, this is a month of talking on this account. He starts getting sweet on her, in her own words. And he says, there's a party tonight. Do you want to come? And they see this as an opportunity and go, yeah, absolutely. What car should I expect you in? And he says, the white Ford Expedition. So, of course, alarm bells go off. They give this information to the police. The police grab him. They bring him in for an interview. And he gives away a certain amount of information, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's actually surprising him giving away information at all. They seem to be very, I think this kind of shows, like, you think like these horrific gangs or whatever, but actually you see how it's not like sophisticated like the mafia or something. They're actually just boys fighting with other boys. That's actually a lot of what it is. Like, they're kind of fooled easily enough by the techniques of the cops. Like they kind of they all give info. Like, so when we take in the first one, that guy Jokes, like, he answers questions. He talks about it. Like he's kind of, I was surprised at how quickly they talk.
Yeah, absolutely. He talks very quickly and he gives away some pretty vital information. So he says that there was, he was the driver, it was his car, that there was 7 in the SUV that night. And by his account, what happened was they were driving along, minding their own business. They came across this car that started then firing at them, despite the fact that there being like no bullet marks on the SUV whatsoever to support that story, So even as you said,
yeah, he even says, I think they were firing at us. Yeah. I think they were firing at us. It's like, you think they were? How do you think someone is shooting? Maybe they were shooting me. I don't know. Like,
he's not even hasn't got the brains or the wherewithal, or like you said, he's still a kid. So like, it's very a kiddie story, isn't it? Like he's caught so easily by the police because they're like, so was there marks on the car? And he's like, no. And they're like, oh, because there was marks on the car that you shot at, but they shot at you and there was no, So they get him quite easily. But that's what he says. And he pins a guy, Julio, Little Huero, they call him, as being the shooter. He's another one of the gang members. He's 17. And they let him go. They let this guy Jokes go because A, there's no evidence. And B, they promised him they would. And they actually say that in the documentary. We promised him we would, that we'd let him go. And they have no massive evidence at that point in time. So there's nothing really to keep him there, I suppose. We're then introduced to Manuel. So Manuel is the ex-gang member, the guy with the hat and the sunglasses. Do you remember this guy?
Yeah.
What did you think of Manuel?
I thought it was interesting to have somebody who's he's ex of the same gang, isn't he? Mm-hmm.
He is.
I thought it was interesting to have somebody who's like, he felt like just a grown-up. It was like just interesting to say, like, he knew it was in it. And the way he speaks about it, he speaks very calmly about it, but also kind of remorsefully. He says, like, we're doing things that we knew we shouldn't have been doing and that kind of thing. But I thought that was an interesting thing. I don't know how.
To show you how easy it is to file a claim with Geico, we hired a nature show host.
In the native habitat of a suburban driveway, the poor victim of a broken windshield is left assessing his vehicle, utterly helpless.
Well, not true. If he's got Geico, he can file a claim online, over the phone, or with his handy mobile app.
But like a lone gazelle, he'll suddenly be left to fend for himself, awaiting his terrible fate.
Nope. Geico will assign him a designated claims team to help him out too.
So the gazelle gets his car fixed and everything. Wow, nature is so cool.
Geico. Great service without all the drama. drama.
DoorDash helps you make cash fast. All you need is your bike and a smartphone. The sign-up process is super quick and easy. Now, you get to choose your own hours and be your own boss. And best of all, you get to keep 100% of your tips. Download the DoorDash driver app today to get started.
How useful he was to the whole film, though. I don't know. I was like, yeah, okay, this is nice. He seems nice. I'm glad he's got himself together. But other than that, like, maybe it's nice to have a look at somebody who, if you find a way to make your way out of it, of a difficult situation and difficult circumstances, maybe it's good. We can see what these boys could have had.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know how he didn't carry much plot or anything. Sure, he didn't.
No. So Manuel, I suppose, I think the point of introducing him was to give an insight into the gang. So, the way he starts off talking about how they were targeted. So, I mean, I totally understand where you're coming from, Shane, because it's not new information. Like we've heard this story before.
Yeah, we know this story. Yeah,
we know how they, infiltrate kids. They'll, initially give them a beer and then invite them to a party. And Manuel kind of talks us through that. And he says something to the effect of, like, he talks about being brought to a party and told to get them drink and told to get them like weed. And he's like, I don't drink, I don't smoke weed. And they beat the shit out of him. And then they hug him and they were like, you're one of us now. And he was like, of course I wanted to be with them because they were the ones that no one would go after. So like he was safe with them.
Yeah, I think it's funny. There's a lot of things similar to the gangs, even in Dublin. You think about or different places in Ireland. It's like, where if people are excluded from society, they find ways to cope. So if you're excluded and you're oppressed by poverty, oppressed by cycles of addiction in your family, you find a way to cope. And in lots of areas, certainly in Dublin, the gangland can sometimes be the biggest employer of young men because these the boys won't be given jobs based on the address if they put their own address on their CV. That's been going on for like years and years. So what else would they do? And also I heard them on the radio the other day, just on Radio 1 or Radio 1, they were talking about like, how, these boys are drawn to. It's not so much that they're drawn to, they have no choice a lot of times, and also they're pulled in rather than being just drawn to it. Obviously lots of boys like things that are like, things that are cool and that they seem to be badass, and that's cool. Loads of boys like that, but actually there's no reason to say that they're inherently want to do acts of violence. Yeah, I think that's an interesting part to have, of how strange the dynamics and the politics within the groups are.
You're hitting the nail on the head, because like you said, who's going to employ them? So this is an opportunity to make money. And a lot of the time they are the sole, breadwinners. And I know that was the case. It doesn't really elaborate on Manuel's case, but with Little Huero, we find out later then that he's the sole breadwinner. And you can kind of, again, not condoning anything he does, but he's a kid when this all takes place. And, he's just making ends meet. He's just kind of doing what he has to do, I suppose. What is the alternative, as you said? At this point in time, then, I suppose, Jamie, the cousin who has set up the MySpace account, she starts talking about the toll it's taken on her, pretending to be Crystal, because she was incredibly close. Like, they were cousins, but they almost sounded more like sisters. And I know that we hear at the start of the documentary that Crystal was an only girl, so she didn't have any sisters, whether Jamie did or not, but they seemed to have a sisterly bond. And she talks about how, she realizes, again at 14, that doing this catfishing on this MySpace account, she's stuck because it has stopped the grieving process, because she not only has to see Crystal, she has to be her, whatever, 12, 13 hours out of the day. Because she said she's literally logging in at 3 p.m. once she finishes school, and she's on it till like 1 or 2 at night. So like, it's becoming all consuming, and I suppose it's a little bit surprising maybe that her aunt Belinda, Crystal's mum, is allowing this to go on. But I suppose she's just overcome with grief, and that's her prerogative. She's got tunnel vision. She's got a goal, and she's obviously not thinking about this 14-year-old's mental health. The police then get word that the brothers are going to take things into their own hands. And and there's a nice little piece to camera with, you know, Rick Wheeler, and then the two brothers, Robert and Justin, and, you know, from both their perspective points of view, where Wheeler is talking about, like, look, I just said to them, you know, if they take this into their own hands, like, I don't ever stand a chance of bringing these guys to justice. They're going to be locked up. What's this going to do to their mother? And with that, I think that's kind of the black moment of the documentary. Would you agree? It seems like all hope is lost. You know, Jamie doesn't seem to be getting any much more information out of the MySpace account. And in fact, she doesn't want to do it anymore. And she tells Belinda that. And, you know, the brothers want to take everything into their own hands, and the police warn them not to. It seems like all hope is lost. And then Belinda decides to take over the MySpace account. And this is where the shit kind of hits the fan, doesn't it, Shane?
Yeah, the boys also promised the mother they won't do it. She said no violence. That's what she originally had said, no more violence. No, that's not going to solve anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, she kind of takes the reins.
Which is interesting that she says that initially, considering what happens 5 minutes. Yeah. I'm going to let you talk us through that though.
Well, I don't know if I'm not good at remembering it now. But she basically is like, she decides herself, she's going to get justice herself by finding out the boys, arranging to find them to set up like a trap to get them somewhere. And then she's going to kill them. She plans herself, I'm going to kill them. That's what she decides to do.
And even like do you remember she starts dropping like voodoo dolls and black candles in their driveways and stuff? She starts like, you know, doing a bit of searching online into their culture and things that would frighten them, and, you know, jinxes and things like that. And she actually starts finding their addresses, going to their houses, you know, voodoo dolls.
These were new. At the time, this was all new. This access to people's knowledge.
Yeah.
That was new. Maybe we are more open now, and also in some ways more guarded now in terms of what we put online. But that was a brand new thing. How else, like, you would be surprised if someone could show up at your house at the time, whereas now you'd kind of go, if someone showed up, not that I'd be involved in a murder, but if someone showed up at my house, I'd be like, right, they figured it out, fair enough. I'd be online, you know what I mean? I probably had the house online, whatever. So this was all new, and this was a new technique and as she says, she's like, I didn't know what it is. I didn't know what the MySpace was. I didn't use any.
I loved that.
But she just adapted to it really quick.
I'm so glad you said that. Yeah, the MySpace. I'm not on the social network. I'm not on the. Yeah, I thought that was brilliant. Like, and very telling of the time as well. Even though it, like I said, it was only made this year, but obviously some of the footage is shot beforehand.
It's about that time. Yeah.
Absolutely. She takes over the account. She does go a bit nuts, let's be fair. I know she's overcome with grief and all, but she literally, as you said, decides to take things into her own hands. She's going to lead them to a secluded location outside of the city limits. She Googles everything from, you know, how far away can gunshot be heard to where's the nearest police station. So she's really doing her research.
Yeah.
And I think she says, and I thought it was a good quote, she said, I was so overcome with grief, I was suicidal and homicidal. And I just said, if that doesn't perfectly summarize what you would be feeling at that moment in time, in equal parts, I'd say, if somebody had killed your child, you know. But it all comes to a crescendo. She, one night again, because she doesn't do this shootout like she plans out. She backs down. She promises she won't do it. And she's just overcome with despair and feels like there's no end in sight. And she's like crying at the laptop in her own words. And she's on the account and she's talking to this jokes guy. And she's like, do you love me? And again, this is what the documentary started with. Do you love me? And he's like, yeah, of course I do. And then she says, well, why did you kill me then? And she said, what kind of the catalyst of all of it was that they had killed her daughter, this girl, and didn't even recognize her. They were looking at her every day on this MySpace account. And it was just the ultimate kick in the teeth. It was the ultimate, like, that's how little her life meant to you.
Yeah. I can't imagine what that is like if you're the mother and sit there and that they don't, how little they actually have their capacity to care. Yeah, absolutely.
he logs off, obviously, because she's after giving the game away. He's never online again after that, this Jokes character. And it seems like, again, all hope is lost. What are they going to do? And there's a couple of times in this documentary where it seems like all hope is lost and what are they going to do? What happens, though, this time is we go back to this guy, Manuel, that we were introduced to, this ex-gang member, and you see now, I suppose, why he's been introduced to us, what part he plays in this narrative. So Manuel and his brother were both in this gang. They were in this 5150 gang. And they are penned or pegged. They figure out that it's them. They're brought into the station. They're kids, again, they're all under 18. They're separated. The officer, Wheeler, goes into Manuel and says, your brother has told us everything. He's confessed everything. We know exactly what happened. So the brother has confirmed the same information that Jokes gave. So he confirms the 7 people in the car, and he confirms that it was Little Güero who was the shooter. And Manuel talks about how initially he still didn't rat on the gang because you didn't talk. That was like your blood oath in this gang. You did not talk. And even though his brother had already confirmed this information, he won't back it up. There was actually this nice part in this bit of the documentary. I don't know if you noticed it, Shane, or not, but do you know the way it shows the CCTV footage, or the footage of them in them being
the room, yeah.
The rooms. Jesus, Gemma, word.
The interview room.
The rooms, the separate rooms. And then they're brought into the one room. And Wheeler is still trying to get information out of Manuel. And his brother is leaning on the table, like on his arm. And he's kind of looking over. And he's like, I don't know what he's doing. Is he picking scabs or squeezing spots or something on his arm? He really doesn't understand the gravity of the situation. He could be sat on his couch, couldn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose maybe they're used to being in trouble, and being in trouble for a small thing is the same as being in trouble for a big thing.
Yeah.
But then it was interesting, like they mentioned it. I thought it was just gas that they both did talk, and then to bring them both together. And then he was like, okay, right, if you're talking, I'll talk.
Yeah.
And the cop even says that he's like, it's very unusual on these things that you get one person to talk, but let alone having
Never mind two. Yeah.
A few of them talking at once
and
corroborating each other's stories. Once it all kind of matched up, he was like, right, bring them together.
Yeah.
Which usually in the films, we see like they have them in separate rooms and they pin it on one of them and get one of them to squeal. Whereas in this, it was like very weird. I didn't know they'd ever do that, where they'd bring the two people together, two different people they've taken in for questioning. None of them have lawyers. None of them have attorneys. No. None of them have any of that.
No.
So they've obviously cleverly managed to get them to not even consider that, but they should do.
But it just bounces back to what you said. It just again lends itself to, these are kids. They're kids. They don't even get how serious this is. Your man is so nonchalant there, squeezing on the pimples on his arm, not a bother on him. Like he thinks he's going home. Okay, I've told you what you want to hear. Like, what do you want from me, kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's just no realization of the gravity of the situation at all. And I don't think it's because they're callous, cold-blooded killers. It's because they're kids. Like,
yeah.
The turning point then, I suppose, is when, like you said, the two of them talk, and that's as a result of the gang burning their house down. The gang burned their house down, and Manuel goes, do you know what? I wasn't going to talk, but if you're going to be like that about it, what have I got to lose? And like, in fairness, he's going to get police protection, and he does, obviously, because he's taken part in this documentary in shades and a beard and bucket hat. He's done everything bar blur out his face and distort his voice, really, hasn't he?
I felt like that beard he has looks like it's temporary. I feel like the beard is the disguise. He'll shave that after. That's what I felt like. He never normally wears a beard.
Beard just looked so out of place, didn't it? It actually kind of looked like a fake beard, but then
the whole thing was weird.
It was nearly too bad a beard. It's kind of well, you probably spend the extra couple of quid and get a decent looking beard if it was a fake one. But yeah, so they actually burnt his parents' house down, and that, I suppose, was to intimidate him and had the complete opposite effect. And he did go and he did testify, and the two of them did. And then the kind of real story finally starts to uncurl, that there was an SUV, allegedly, again, you don't know, but this is the story as they're telling it. There was an SUV earlier in the day that had shot at friends of theirs. And then they're out riding in Jokes' SUV that night. The guy who was shot at goes, "That's the car that shot at me earlier." And that's why the subsequent turn of events took place. That's their story. That's why the shootout took place. They chased that person down. Little Huero, by their own words, was a psychopath. He would do anything for the gang, and he was a shooter. So he hopped out and he shot the bullets. He fired the shots. So then it's nearly a year later, but not quite, that they do this sweep then on the gang as a result of the information that Manuel and his brother have given. And they effectively wipe out this gang. Like, this gang is not in existence anymore. Because of the information that Manuel and his brother gave, which is crazy, I think. Like, that's a feat in and of itself.
It actually felt like something from a fiction film, like a feature film, where they just sweep around and close down the whole thing and have them all arrested. It was like, I mean, you'd be delighted if you lived there. Yeah. It kind of wraps up rather quickly in that regard. You know, they do this sweep, they shut it all down. And then there's some of the news reports talking about this MySpace account that the family had, and that, you know, that gets a little bit of attention in terms of news and media. And then I thought this was just the most heartbreaking part of the whole thing. Don't get me wrong, it's about a girl's murder. Obviously, that is heartbreaking, but they speak with Little Huero, the shooter's sister. Do you remember this? Her name eludes me now, but they have a little interview with her, and she's talking about the poverty, like you said, this whole other side of the narrative, the reasons why he was ever involved in the gang to begin with. It's heartbreaking, isn't it? Anytime we meet families like that, I think that's when we start to remember those parts. Like when you see the two brothers, you see their mother, and she talks about how these boys in the gang, she's like, they were respectful. They never used bad language in front of me. They were polite to me. They were good. They knew each other since they were kids. And you're kind of, these are the boys who grew up to be in what's supposedly this terrifying, chilling gang who wreak havoc around the area or whatever in the neighborhood. I don't know all the crimes they do, but whatever they do. And the same with meeting this sister, because she's like, it struck me when she's talking about how the judge described her brother. Yeah. And she says, he said he was a bad person. And she's upset that the judge might call him, I said, not a good person. Yeah. Just that alone, it was like, well, based on his actions from an outsider, if you knew nothing, you'd say, well, no, not a good person. And then what we learned from her is that this was a boy who was trying any way he could to try and feed his siblings, to try and keep a roof over their head, to try and keep food on the table. That's what he was doing, and getting mixed up in a gang is just part of how he managed to pull that off, to keep them fed.
That's it. And that's it. You've hit the nail on the head, Shane. She even says that they were so poor that they were literally eating scraps off the floor, like whatever they could get their hands on, that their mother was like a drug addict and, you know, bet the shite out of them. And that Little Huero, Julio, he was the breadwinner, and he entered that gang when he was 14, like, you know, as well. And then takes part in the shooting at 17. You know, you said it at the start, at the head of this podcast, and I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head from the get-go. There's a couple of different narratives in this, and I feel like none of them were explored fully. I feel like for whatever reason, well, obviously, I mean, it's gimmicky. They tried to use the MySpace thing as the focus and the interesting thing, and it's, in my opinion, anyway, look, Shane, if you don't agree with me, go for it. But I don't think that's the most interesting part of this story at all. Like you said, the whole MySpace thing is actually quite dated.
It's just not now. We're bored by that in our current 2021 lives. At the time, I'm sure that was fascinating. I'm sure it makes for a great story. It was like she went online, she pretended to be someone else. It would never work now.
No.
Nobody, with the amount, those weird spam messages you get from someone like, hello, my new friend, like everyone knows, nobody listens to any of it. You certainly wouldn't, you check when the profile was made. So that's not the hook. But actually, I thought I wanted, yes, they could have used that to lever the whole film somewhere else, but we didn't get enough of it.
No.
That's what I felt. I was like, tell us more about that. Tell us more. Like, I feel like, I wanted that to be such a part of it and it didn't make anybody a villain. It didn't make anybody,
No.
It didn't blame society. It didn't say the funding for these areas. It didn't say what support services were lacking in the area. None of those things. And I wanted a bit more of that. I wanted a bit more of that, of how many, young Latino men are involved in organized crime and how disproportionate that is compared to white young men. I wanted more of those kind of things rather than being left to sit with the snippets of that I know already before I started the film. I wanted more of that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'd agree with you there. I mean, there's a real kind of redemption arc on the part of Belinda, the mother. And like I said, up until this point, I didn't find anyone particularly likable. I didn't feel like I was rooting for anyone, but I thought this was quite a nice end to her story. So she obviously was initially going to take things into her own hands and kind of did with the MySpace, and then obviously was going to do the shootout and all that. But she falls into a deep depression, and her son, almost the youngest son, whose name eludes me at the moment, but it's not Robert, it's not Justin, it's the other guy. He almost falls into a gang as well. He's on the cusp of falling into a gang, of being initiated. I think he's like 17 or that. And she says that she takes a good look at herself. And she says that she hasn't been high since the day Crystal was murdered. So she was a user of meth. And like, again, I get the impression that wasn't that big a deal in that neighborhood. And that's an awful thing to say. And it's tragic. And it's that, but I'm not making excuses for her, but I feel like where they're living, it just wasn't considered that big a deal. Like, everybody knew she was on it. Her daughter knew she was on it. And she says, even like, her daughter Crystal used to always be saying, "Mom, please give it up, like get off it." And she says that the day she was murdered was the last day she got high, and that she realized that she had to let go of the anger and she had to forgive herself. So she was, baying for blood, going for the jugular initially with this gang. And then she realized that when they were found and when all this information came out, she still wasn't satisfied. She didn't still feel any better than she had. And she realized that the issue was never with that. It was the anger that she had at herself, that, the life she had led her family into this life and led them into a situation, I suppose, where they were in danger. And then at the same time, that whole thing with her own son going on, and I suppose seeing how easily he slipped into a gang, and he's not a bad kid, and the parallels then with her daughter's murderer. As a result, she asks for the option for the death penalty to be taken off the table. I thought that was fascinating. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I thought this whole section, where she's very insightful about a lot of things. So one of the things is that when she says even just small things, when her younger son then he was so grief stricken, so mad at the world that he was angry and wanted revenge, and he started leaning towards the gang himself, the opposing gang. And she says that we were losing him to a gang. And I think even if you look at that, it's not like one day somebody wakes up and is like, I'm in the gang now, sign me up, give me my tattoo behind my ears. It's a process whereby she's losing them. So I think that just shows you how horrifying it is when someone starts to get involved with a gang like that. It's like you're losing them. It's like you're trying to keep them. Yeah. And then I think I like that she says it was the first, when she took having reflected on all of that and reflected on her own son, and they asked for the death penalty to be removed. She said it was the first time in her life she ever did the right thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's obviously horribly tragic that it takes the death of her daughter in tragic circumstances to kind of really help her find whatever she needed to remove herself from addiction or to fight her way out of it or whatever. That is tragic, but it is, I thought it's an interesting part of the film, an interesting part of somebody's life we're watching.
Yeah.
That we unless it's happening to you, you can't really fully empathize and relate to it properly. But
Yeah.
I think we felt a lot different about her instantly then during those few minutes. Yeah.
We learned then that Little Whiro gets life without parole as a result of her taking or asking for the death penalty to be taken off the table. And initially, it comes up on the screen that like Jokes is still at large, but then there's this scene with her doing the tarot cards, and she's into all that now, obviously. And she, flips up the justice card, and she was like, "Oh, this tells me that he will be caught. He will be caught soon." And then, a text flashes up on the screen and says that Jokes was reprimanded in Mexico. I think it was like 2 weeks later, after this was the finished filming or something, married with 4 kids. And then the absolute irony, how he was found, was a tip off on Facebook. So, the story seems to have come full circle. And it ends there. It finishes up there. In terms of like, did you have a favorite part of the documentary? Was there a bit you loved?
I think I liked hearing that. I think when the story is progressive, I didn't love the film altogether.
No.
It wouldn't have been my favorite. I'm not sure how quickly I'd recommend it loads of people. But I think I liked the story of, I think, just hearing that woman persevering, Belinda persevering and trying so hard to kind of make sense of her life, and still trying after so long of struggling. Like, we learned about her addiction years ago, about she's like, that's what it took to feed 5 kids and work 2 jobs and keep a roof over their head. She's like, I needed to do that. And I think that was interesting. I like that she's come to a place now, even after a horrible tragedy, that she's come to a place of being able to do those things without needing to lean on meth, without needing to do things that are harmful in order to achieve what she needs. So I think that's interesting. And then I thought that was interesting, her playing with using the angel cards at the end. So yeah, Belinda for me was kind of her particular story of her own life and her own growth was more interesting to me than even any of the MySpace stuff. For me.
Yeah, I know, and I would concur absolutely. It got 5.6 on IMDb and 70% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I don't know about you. I think that's a pretty fair score. With the documentary as it's currently presented. As you said, if it was reworked, if it was made into maybe a series, if, maybe each episode focused on one thing. So one focuses on the MySpace thing, one focuses on the gang violence and even a separate one, or maybe the same one about the poverty in the area. And like you said, the politics and all of that and the lure. I feel like it just... You're right. It wasn't a cohesive story. And the way it was laid out then as well, it wasn't, unfortunately, enough to keep you interested, I don't think. And even the hour and 23 minutes, I don't know if you'd agree, it even felt long. And I mean, that's probably
we could have benefited from a journalist. We could have benefited from a journalist in there too, because everybody who was spoken to, who we meet in the film, is somebody really close to the central story. So either the family member of the girl who was murdered, the people who are involved in whatever way within the murder, or the cop who investigates it. I think we could have done with a journalist for that wider context, rather than just try and let it happen, let it just flow out, as in, oh, this is what the area is like. It would be nicer to be given that along the way by somebody who's an outsider. So I think maybe this wasn't covered by some local journalist. I don't know, but I think that could, an outsider's view, the spectator sees more of the game sometimes. And I think it would have been nicer to have somebody like that just kind of help to that we could connect to almost as the audience. We'd connect more with the journalist because we're also learning about this from an outsider's point of view. So I think that would have been useful. Or an academic or something. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, well, an objective. Yeah, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. I'm going to ask what seems like a stupid question now. Would you recommend it?
I mean, it depends. If you want, the thing is, it is only one. A lot of these things that people into true crime, it's like you make a big commitment.
Yeah.
It's absolutely possible of a rainy afternoon.
Yep.
No problem. It is. And I wouldn't say like, oh no, don't watch it, it's crap. I think it has its problems, sure. And I've loved other things much more. But yeah, I would totally watch it. I would tell people, yeah, it's an interesting enough story, and the characters, which is obviously the crude word when you talk about these things, the characters.
I
the
know.
personalities within, Some of them are interesting, so it's good to have it. It's good to meet them too. But yeah, I wouldn't write it off. That's the thing. 5.5, is that what you said on IMDb?
5.6 on IMDb and 70% on Rotten Tomatoes. But Rotten Tomatoes, they tend to mark easier. IMDb are always very, very tough markers. Even like the things.
But that's out of 10, right? So that's like a D2 in your leaving cert. So that's not too bad.
Shane Daniel Byrne, it was an absolute pleasure. Tell us this, what are you at this weather, or can you tell us?
Well, the next thing, the biggest thing that's out at the moment is I'm doing comedy, and I'm hosting an event for Soft Productions, which is in Dundee House in Navan, County Meath, on 3rd and 4th September. So they have bands. Yeah, they've got really cool music from Roe, but Roe and a couple of others, Danny Larkin, and then I can't remember the other guy's name. I forget his name, but the headline act is Pillow Queens. So I'm very excited about that. Getting to introduce Pillow Queens on the stage. So on the 3rd and 4th, they're all in my link tree on my bio there. Yeah,
excellent. And tell us this: what was that, or can you tell us about the calendar on your stories today? Everyone's getting
the young hot guys. The young hot guys are releasing a calendar. The calendar will be for charity. September 1st. It's a calendar that goes from September to August, like a school calendar.
Brilliant.
So it's not one you can get in the shop at Christmas or in those weird calendar shops that appear in the shopping centers. But yeah, it's all the money goes to charity, and it's very fun, and it's hot, and we're young hot guys.
That's brilliant. You had it up on your story this morning. I literally sent it to everyone. I was like, guess what you're getting for Christmas? That's even better now. So They won't even get the full year out of it.
No, because we run from September. September's in there. And there's also, it's not just a calendar with cool hot pictures. It's also trickled in with fun dates that we've put inside the calendar as well. And that's all in collaboration with the wonderful Dubliner whiskey.
I love it. It's Shane Daniel Byrne on Instagram. If you're not following him, if you're following me and not following him, you seriously need to reevaluate your life. He's absolutely hysterical. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for agreeing to come on the show and join us and talk to us.
Thank you so much for having me. It is.
And I hope you'll come back. I will, of
course.
I'll give you a better one this time.
Yeah, cool. Deal.
Where does the time go? Guys, that's all we have time for this week. As I said at the head of the episode, remember to follow us on social media. We're at What's Up Doc Podcast. Over on Instagram, we've been doing an L competition, an L giveaway with a lovely Irish company called Rudy's & Co. So we're giving away one of their Fuck It chains, and we're also giving away a true crime themed t-shirt. It's nice, and it's black and white, and it says I like true crime and maybe 3 people. So if you're like me, that will be very, very apt. So yeah, head on over there. And as well, look, I've said it before, but we do Instagram lives. So obviously this is a fortnightly podcast, and every other week then on Instagram, we do lives with our special guests talking about the true crime cases that started their fascination with the genre. If you like what we do, show your appreciation, head on over to Apple Podcasts, rate us, review us, give us 5 stars, go on. Yeah, just let us feel the love. I love to feel the love. That's all we've got time for this week. Guys, it's been a pleasure as always. Good luck. Good night. God bless.
You coming to bed, hon?
Yep, honey, I'll be right there. Just gotta turn out the light. Ow! 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 Ah! Ah!
Some things never change. Like your kids always leaving tiny toys on the floor for you to step on. And Geico saving folks lots of money on their car insurance.
Sweetie, I think I left the downstairs light on.
Please don't make me go.
15 minutes could save you 15% or more.